Hey, how you doing? This is Brannon Jones, author of the award-winning College Readiness 101 workbook series, here with the College Readiness 101 podcast. And I am starting the Students Perspective series. And so I'm working with students all over the country, students that I've worked with my foundation or with my workbook series, and families that I've worked with in the past, and some students that I don't know. We're going to be interviewing them and talking about their perspective, their experience through their college preparatory process, through their college life experience. And so I'm very happy to have Ms. Genesis Velasco here today. Hey, Genesis, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. So, Genesis, you are at Boston University, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, all right. So, for my subscribers who are going to be watching, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm a current freshman at Boston University. I'm a health science major on the pre-med track, and I graduated from Morrow High School in 2020.
That's right. You graduated from my alma mater, so I am excited to have a Mustang here on this series. I'm very excited that you're here, and so this whole series is to help students and parents kind of shorten their learning curve, because you are a couple of steps ahead of them, and we want to make sure that they can get a lot of information from you. So I'm excited that you're here today. So let's go ahead and begin. So, my first question for you is, how did you settle on Boston University? You were all the way in New England. How did you settle on Boston as a college for you?
I settled on Boston University primarily because initially it was because of the scholarship that I received in order to attend Boston University. But after researching more about the university and like how optimal the location was, being, a pre-med student, how it was so close to a lot of other like really prestigious universities, it was so close to a lot of teaching hospitals, and there were just so many resources around Boston that I never, thought about in my college application process until I was given the opportunity of interviewing for the scholarship that I received. So after really going in depth and like researching BU, talking to current students, financial aid advisors, and professors, I felt like BU was the best fit for me.
Okay, okay, okay. And so you actually are a Posse scholar, right? So you received a scholarship from the Posse Foundation. Tell us a little bit about the Posse Foundation and what your experience was like.
Sure. So the Posse Foundation is a scholarship that sends 10 students from certain cities to a certain university. And the whole purpose of Posse is there was a student that said, I would have had my Posse with me, I never would have dropped out of college. So it has essentially been a huge support system. There was a really intricate, interview process that was unlike any interview process I had ever experienced before. But then once we were accepted into the scholarship program, from January up until we actually matriculated into to BU, I was able to collaborate with these students. I was able to get to know them. And now that I'm on campus, I have the support system. I already know people. I have a mentor on campus. They do workshops that help you find internships and jobs during college and after college. So it's just this huge amount of resources and this huge support system that I really, really appreciate from Posse.
Yep, yep, yep. I love Posse. So my assistant director when I started Next Step Education Foundation, she was a Posse scholar from New York, and so we are a Posse nominating organization, and I'm just in love with what Posse is doing for students and providing that full tuition scholarship. So it's like a huge, huge help for a lot of families. So speaking of your family, you kind of shared with me that your family are immigrants from another country, and so you actually came in and you are a first generation college student. So as a first generation college student, kind of what was your college preparatory process, before getting your Posse scholarship?
It was very stressful because, as you mentioned, I'm a first gen college student, so I didn't receive a lot of support from my family, not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't understand a lot of what was going on. So I had to independently navigate that process by myself. But I was thankful of stumbling upon this mentoring platform that I'm so, so appreciative for, where I was paired with this mentor who I believe she was a college sophomore, but she had my same major, same career aspirations. She had a similar background, So whenever I would meet with her, she would always give me a set of things that I was supposed to be doing. For instance, like, oh, now you need to apply for scholarships. Now I can edit your essays. Now you have to do the FAFSA. So it was just really nice to have that person that held you accountable for everything that you needed to do. But I also spent a lot of time on YouTube, looking at students that had already been through the process, looking at what advice they would give to people that are applying, the do's and don'ts, kind of what their student profile was like. So I spent hours on YouTube. So it was really helpful just to see the wide range of students going to these wide range of institutions and what were like the similarities and differences in their process.
Yep. And that's exactly how it worked, because I remember seeing you at Next Step Education's college fair. I know that you were going to go to all other type of events as well. Was there anything else any other events or activities that you attended when you was preparing for college?
Yes, I participated in a fly-in program. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's essentially where it's usually students of color when they're invited to tour certain universities, but you don't just tour them. You get to stay there usually for a weekend. You get to live in the dorms. You get to interact with current students, financial aid, people, professors, and things of that nature. So I felt like that was a great opportunity for me because I wouldn't have been able to afford a tour if I didn't have the opportunity. And as you mentioned, I did go to a lot of college fairs to kind of expose myself to universities and resources that I didn't anticipate before because BU was never on my radar until, Posse became a thing. So that really opened my eyes to, other opportunities and being really open-minded because what I once thought was what I wanted to do may not be that way once, I gain more information, a bigger perspective on colleges and what would be the best fit for me.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. And that's what we're sharing is you got to be exposed. So that's what my whole business, my whole foundation, my whole passion is about providing access and information for students, and so that's perfect. How you just talked about that is that once you got more information, that could have that better shaped what your ideas of what the possibilities are for you. So I'm glad that you were able to go through that process. So cool. So now that you're at Boston, you are in your freshman year, you are sophomore bound, right? What has been like your experience so far in Boston? What is Boston providing you as your experience? How has it been so far?
First, it's so cold here. Like my Georgia body, I don't think we were meant to be in a cold weather at first.
Yeah, I bet.
But thankfully, because of COVID, I haven't left my room too much, so I've been able to admire the snow from afar. But that was the biggest shock.
Yeah, I bet. New England is very cold, right? So
Yes, I did not anticipate that, even though I knew it was New England. But anyways, Boston has provided me a lot of educational opportunities that I didn't know were previously possible or on my radar, such as like study abroad, being able to network with professors the way that I am. I feel like when you're going to college, a lot of teachers tell you, "Oh, you're not going to be able to get to know your professor. It's going to be these huge classes." And while it's true that some classes are really big, I've had some really, really small classes, especially thanks to COVID. Now that, our classes are a lot smaller, there's four people in a lot of my smaller classes, and I've really been able to establish relationships with my professors. I've been able to take classes that actually interest me. In high school, you have to take your general education
yeah,
requirements just to
yeah.
graduate. But here, most of my classes are health related, and I've really been able to collaborate with students that have the same passions, that are like minded. And it's just really nice to be able to find that community of people that are working towards the same things you are, because then you network with each other, you share resources with each other. And it's just a really nice collaborative community because it's not as cutthroat as you may think that college is like.
Got you. So that's really cool. So I've never been to Boston, but now that you're there, if I ever get a chance to come up, I'll definitely come and take you to lunch because it's a really really good thing that students are kind of spreading their wings, right? And so you from Atlanta, from Clayton County, I grew up in Clayton County, and you've gone further away than a lot of students, right? It's not just a drive away, And so, how has that been for you? Have you been homesick? What has that been like, just spreading your wings that far? How's that been for you?
It's been a great experience. I feel like the reason that I chose to go so far away is because not only am I starting this new chapter of, college, but I'm also going into adulthood. So I
Yeah.
felt as if I would have stayed close to home, then if I had a problem or if I was struggling, I would immediately try to call my parents. But being here, that's not an option. So I really feel strongly about being independent, being able to make my own decisions, my own mistakes, and learning from them in order to, ease that transition into adulthood. Um, I haven't really felt homesickness. My parents have terribly. They call me every single
They
day.
miss you.
If I don't call them, they're like, "You have parents. Hello, are you alive?" Um, but I've missed food from home really badly. I don't know if it's just the dining hall or what, but I feel like food doesn't have seasoning here. So I have my own stash. I'm looking at it of seasoning that I bought on day one, so I can, spice up the food.
Yeah. There's nothing like a home cooked meal, right? So from home, right? This makes you feel like you're at home. So okay, all right, cool. So now that you're in college, you kind of got almost a year under your belt. Um, I ask this to students: is there anything that you wish someone would have told you before you got to college? Was there anything that you were kind of surprised by, or may not have been as prepared for when you got to college?
Yes, there are quite a few things. So the first thing is the first semester is always a transition semester. No matter where you're going, no matter what you feel like you're going to do, it's always a transition semester. It's usually when people have like their lowest grade because they are transitioning. And so I wish somebody would have told me that give myself time to struggle. I was always like a huge perfectionist in high school and I always expected a 4.0 and to be involved in everything, but I really just needed to slow down, pump my brakes. I needed to be able to ask for help. I needed to be able to give myself time to adjust to a new environment. So if somebody would have told me that, then I probably would have put less on my plate going in so that I would have, like done better and been able to access more resources. In addition, I didn't realize how real imposter syndrome was, especially since I'm so far away from home. And I guess the socioeconomic status of people here is a lot higher than what I've been accustomed to, as well as like the resources that people have. So for a long time, I felt, like, do I deserve a spot here? Am I comparable to the other students here? Because I just felt like I was so much lower than other students. So if somebody would have told me, how real imposter syndrome was, but how okay it was to feel that way at first, but then, acknowledging, I deserve a spot here. I work just as hard as other people here. I felt like that would have eased my transition as well. And I also wish that people would have told me how difficult science classes were in college. I don't know if I just wasn't really, I did AP classes, I did dual enrollment at like three different schools, and I thought I was prepared, but coming here, I struggled so hard in chemistry. Like I was a 4.0 student, but as soon as I got here, my 4.0 went away
Yeah,
immediately. But
yeah.
yeah, it was difficult.
Yeah. Those science classes are very hard. And I was just talking to another student about how when I was at Morrow, we had a chance to take either anatomy or chemistry, right? And so I took anatomy, and that's what got me interested in becoming a forensic scientist. We actually had a lot of experiments with meat outside and entomology and all these different things, and that's what kind of got me interested in it. But I didn't have to take chemistry. My first time taking chemistry was when I got to Albany State, when I actually got to college, and that chemistry was kicking my butt, right? And so I quickly changed from forensic science to criminal justice, right? Because it's just that chemistry was just so hard, right? So that's something that's interesting, and that's going to be a common thing for a lot of students is the classes will weed you out, right? And so I know a lot of biology majors that I was in school with that had to change their major, right? It's just one of those difficult majors. So that's really interesting that you said that. So okay, all right. So that's cool. That's cool. So now that you have had some difficult classes, now that you've been there for a while, um, what have you learned about yourself? You've been there almost a year. Um, because I think self-observation and self-learning is just as important as learning the concepts and the content of your program. So so far, as a freshman, soon to be sophomore, what have you learned about yourself?
I've learned a lot of things about myself. First, I didn't know how to study before coming to college. I was
Really?
always labeled as like a gifted kid, AP student, all of that. And I never really had to study to do well. But coming here, what worked in high school does not work in college. I had to unlearn all my bad habits. I had to basically live at the library. That was my second home. I had to go to the Educational Resource Center and learn about time management, how to study. It was just a lot of bad habits I didn't know that I had to unlearn immediately if I knew that I was going to be successful. I mentioned that first semester is a transition semester. So at the end of that semester, after final exams, where I was feeling really bad about my performance, I just had to stop and reflect like what worked, what didn't work, what changes do I
Mm,
need to make. And a lot of that was like I mentioned, time management and being able to learn how to study. And along with time management, getting 8 hours of sleep. I never had to
yeah.
worry about getting 8 hours of sleep before, but now I'm realizing, when you're going off of 4 hours of sleep and 3 cups of coffee, you're not performing as well. Your brain just isn't there. And so I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
had to learn how to prioritize myself, my own mental health, and be able to find a balance. Because in high school, I was involved in everything, and I tried to do that same thing here, but it's like you can't do that because classes are so much more difficult and you can't be involved in everything.
Yeah.
So I've just had to learn how to take it down a notch, find a balance, manage my time, learn how to study, and just reevaluate what works and what doesn't to make sure that I am able to be successful here.
Yeah, it sounds like you really had a priority, come to Jesus meeting, right? So it's just like, hey, I got to find out what my priorities are, and I have to learn exactly what I need to be doing for me to be successful. So that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. So I actually have one last question for you, and I'm going to ask all the students who participate in the Students Perspective series this one question because, again, we want to be able to shorten the learning curve for a lot of students, a lot of families because you are a couple of steps ahead of them. So, this last question is there any advice that you have for current high school students who are college bound, getting ready to prepare for, that high school to college transition? Kind of what advice would you have for them?
So the biggest advice that I would give these students is to start early. I started pretty late in my process, which made me have to like rush to do things. I didn't give myself time to ask questions and make mistakes. So if you start early, you're able to learn about things earlier. You're able to seek out resources, with more time and anticipation, and you're able to make those mistakes, but it's okay because you have time. Secondly, I would highly, highly recommend getting a mentor. I feel like my mentor was the biggest help towards my college application process, and I would be so lost if I didn't have her guiding me. And I felt like she was especially helpful because not only was she, coming from the same background and the same major as me, but she had just gone through the process. So I personally felt like a student being my mentor was a lot more helpful than an adult who hasn't recently been through the process because they
Okay.
can tell you more about their personal experiences, how they struggled, and they make your struggles feel validated. They're like, yeah, I know I struggled doing this and I struggled doing that, versus like an older person that hasn't recently been through the process, doesn't specifically know what you're going through. In addition, take advantage of free resources. There are so many free resources out there that I didn't know about, that, like my high school didn't tell me about, that I had to independently search for. But there were just so many opportunities. I mentioned, like a fly-in program I didn't even know about that, but they're free, and there's programs for hundreds of universities. The college fair that we went to, there's like SAT, ACT prep boot camps. I think Next Step Education held one that I
Yep.
attended.
Yep.
Um,
Hmm.
so there's just so many free resources. I mentioned I was on YouTube a lot. Even YouTube is a free resource that can help you way more than you think. So just like take advantage of your resources because they are there. A lot of them are free, and no matter what your background is, these resources are here to make sure that you can, matriculate into college.
That is some phenomenal advice for our college bound families, and they're going to take a lot of that to heart, and they'll be able to use this advice and implement it into their college readiness or their college readiness journey, right? So I'm very excited about that. So thank you so much for being a part of this and being a part of the Student Perspective series. I can't wait to hear your successes there at Boston. Thank you again for being a part today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. All right. So if you like what you're hearing and you want to learn more, you can subscribe to the College Readiness 101 podcast. And you can follow me on my social media platforms at College Readiness 101 on Instagram and Facebook. And if you need resources, the College Readiness 101 workbook series, the College Bound Parent mini series, or the grade level survival kits, you can visit my website at collegereadiness101.com. We'll talk to you next time.